Pues buenos días, América, buenas tardes, Europa. Me da muchísimo gusto estar hoy aquí reunida con cada uno, con cada una de ustedes, en este momento en el que nos unimos con unas compañeras, un momento muy bello de encuentro, tanto con Phyllis Zagano y con Ellie, que están aquí acompañándonos, Ellie Hidalgo y Yolanda Cortés. En este momento me siento, bueno, dichosa de este webinar y me llena de orgullo que más de 100 personas se registraron a este seminario. Eh, Quiero recordarles que esta conferencia será en inglés, pero tenemos la compañía de Ellie con nosotros, de Ellie Hidalgo, quien hará la traducción simultánea. Para ello les pedimos que en la parte de abajo de del Zoom, en donde se ve un mundo, un signo de un mundito, ahí puedan oprimir y buscar la traducción en español. En esa traducción en español, ustedes escucharán a Ellie traduciendo todo lo que dice Phyllis y así pueden ustedes disfrutar de este maravilloso webinar. También les solicito que las preguntas, reflexiones que tengan, las puedan hacer por el chat y Yolanda nos va a ayudar a juntarlas y a poderlas compartir para Ellie y para Phyllis para que puedan responderla. Y bueno, pues me da muchísima alegría estar aquí con un tema pues controvertido, un tema que es muy polémico y sobre todo en estos últimos tiempos en el que el nuevo Papa ha dicho de nuevo no al diaconado de las mujeres. Y creo que los estudios y la investigación que ha llevado a cabo durante muchísimos años Phyllis Zagano es tan importante porque nos abre los ojos a una nueva mirada en la que muchas veces no conocemos, no sabemos los fundamentos, las raíces de esta posibilidad del diaconado a las mujeres. Y bueno, pues esta mañana también me acompaña la querida Yolanda Cortés, una amiga querida con la que nos hemos encontrado varias veces en el camino. Ella es mexicana, pero vive en Chicago. Y bueno, pues bienvenida Yolanda. Y te doy la palabra para que presentes tú a Phyllis y a Ellie. Muchas gracias.
Claro que sí, con mucho gusto. Bueno, voy a comenzar con Ellie. Ellie Hidalgo es codirectora de Discerning Deacons, un proyecto que involucra a los católicos en el discernimiento activo de nuestra iglesia sobre las mujeres y el diaconado. Discerning Deacons participa activamente en el proceso sinodal global, ayudando a animar más de 350 sesiones que alcanzaron 9,000 personas en la fase de escucha. Ellie está comprometida a servir a esta visión audaz y profética de una iglesia sinodal que camina unida como pueblo de Dios en nuestra lucha, llena de fe por la justicia, la dignidad y la paz. Cuenta con 12 años de experiencia en el ministerio parroquial en la Misión de Dolores, una parroquia jesuita en la comunidad inmigrante mexicana centroamericana del este de Los Ángeles, California. Muchas gracias, Ellie. Y ahora voy a continuar con la presentación de la doctora Phyllis Zagano. Phyllis Zagano es investigadora principal asociada, residente y profesora adjunta de religión en la Universidad de Hofstra. Se incorporó a la Universidad de Hofstra en 2002. Sus cursos incluyen misticismo y la búsqueda espiritual, vida, muerte e inmortalidad, e historia de la espiritualidad irlandesa. Tiene una licenciatura del Marymount College, Tarrytown, Nueva York, un doctorado de la Universidad Estatal de Nueva York en Stony Brook y 3 maestrías en comunicaciones, Universidad de Boston, literatura, Universidad de Long Island y teología, Universidad de St. John's. Es autora o editora de 26 libros sobre estudios religiosos y cientos de artículos y reseñas. Sus escritos se han publicado en inglés y o traducidos en Argentina, Australia, Bélgica, Brasil, Canadá, Croacia, República Checa, República Democrática del Congo, Eslovaquia, Japón, Francia, Inglaterra, Ciudad del Vaticano, India, Indonesia, Irlanda, Italia, Nueva Zelanda, Polonia, Portugal, República de Filipinas, Venezuela y Estados Unidos. Su estudio pionero, Holy Saturday, An Argument for the Restoration of the Female Diaconate in the Catholic Church, Crossroads 2000, ganó los premios anuales del libro de la Catholic Press Association y la College Theology Society. Trabajos más recientes también han recibido premios: Women in Catholicism, Gender Communion, and Authority, Macmillan 2012. Premio del libro de la Catholic Press Association y Women Icons of Christ, Phyllis 2020. Premio del libro de la Catholic Media Association.
Pues con este currículum tan delicioso y tan rico, bueno, pues estamos dando la palabra a nuestra querida ponente, que disfrutemos esto y acuérdense que pueden irse a la traducción simultánea que Ellie nos está haciendo al español en el pequeño icono del mundo. Ahí pueden escucharla. Muchísimas gracias y come on, Phyllis, very welcome and go ahead with your word. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you. I'm sorry I'm not in Mexico, but we will talk a little bit about the ongoing discussion about women in the diaconate. I was surprised to hear Maria Andrea say that Pope Leo had said something. Maybe I misunderstood. What Pope Leo said most recently about women in the diaconate is that it's a problem of culture. The European Synod team specifically asked for women in leadership and the ordination of women deacons. Cardinal Jaime Spengler from Brazil has been very forceful in asking about women deacons. But let me tell you about my research. The next book I have is called The Vatican and Women Deacons. Right now, only in English. There have been six Vatican studies about women deacons. I will briefly tell you about them, and then we can talk about what's happening today. The Vatican began to study women in the diaconate in 1973. For 3 years, a panel called the Commission on Women in Church and in Society, which Pope Paul VI established, talked about women deacons. Almost simultaneously, in 1973, the International Theological Commission had a subcommittee studying women deacons. There were many members of that subcommittee who were very positive about women deacons. And they were very famous theologians. Congar, Gonzalez, Ligiu, Vagagini, very, very fine theologians. 2 published papers, Congar and Vagagini, published papers about women deacons. 2 members of the committee wanted a vote. It's in 1973. But the study was pushed aside. And another member of the committee spearheaded the writing of another document called Inter and Seniores. If you remember, Inter and Seniores is the first Vatican document against women priests. It has nothing to do with women deacons. Okay. The member of the committee who spearheaded, maybe even initiated this particular document, Inter and Seniores, was Joseph Ratzinger. The study that was published, nothing happened about women deacons until 1997. It's a long time. 1997, when there was a second subcommittee of the International Theological Commission, which printed a paper, finished the study. It was voted on. The entire ITC, International Theological Commission, voted and said yes to women deacons. But the prefect, the head of the International Theological Commission in 1997, was the prefect of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. His name was Joseph Ratzinger. I was told in person and in writing by a member of that committee that they voted positively for women deacons. The document was never published. I'm sure it exists. But the archives of the now dicastery for the doctrine of the faith are closed. They are only open until 1958. So no documents after 1958 can be accessed in the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith archives. 2002, another study, okay? This study had a whole new subcommittee. It was headed by a former student of Ratzinger. This is where the argument about history comes up. It says that male and female deacons in history did not do the same thing. And in terms of their discussion, they do note, this is very important in 2002, the document that was published, it's very clear that the diaconate and the priesthood are separate orders, okay? And what they said in 2002 is, this is something the magisterium must decide. Who was the magisterium? At the time, John Paul II. Nothing happened. It was still left for the magisterium to decide. Who is the next magisterium? Benedict XVI. Joseph Ratzinger. Nothing happened. Then, in 2016, the International Union of Superiors General, which is the group of all the heads of all the religious orders of women in the world, I think they have 1,600 members. They asked Pope Francis in public, what about women deacons? Why not have a commission to study this? He said, that's a good idea. So in August of 2016, Pope Francis named 12 people, including me, to a special commission to study women in the diaconate. Okay. I was a member. There were six men, 6 women named. The others were extraordinarily well-known and competent theologians, extremely fine people, historians, biblical scholars, ecclesiologists, systematic theologians. We had 4 meetings, okay? And we produced a report. A part of our report, the history report, was given by Pope Francis to the International Union of Superiors General. I was there. I was there. I saw it. Okay. I did not recognize Pope Francis's description of our work. Three times, I asked Cardinal Ladaria, who had given our papers, I guess, to Pope Francis. I wanted to see what he sent. I have never seen, and I don't think anyone else in my commission has seen, what went from us to Pope Francis. I have read very interesting reports about what we did. I am under papal secrecy, but I have no idea what these reports are talking about. Anyway, in 2020, a second papal commission was named. Okay. The Amazon Synod supported women deacons. 9 of 12 language groups, and some members spoke openly. Notably, Cardinal Jaime Spengler, whom I mentioned earlier, president of Celam. And Francis responded by creating a new commission with different members. Most of these people were catechists, 1 liturgical scholar, 2 biblical scholars. I will tell you that 2 weeks ago, I spoke with Cardinal McElroy of Washington, D.C., who told me that he was at the Amazon Synod and the bishops approved women deacons. He told me that twice in person. So what happened? we get to the Synod on Synodality, which began in 2021 and finished its first phase in 2024. At the beginning, it was said, no doctrine will be discussed. And no doctrine really was discussed. But women deacons were discussed. There is no doctrine against ordaining women as deacons. Remember, this is something the magisterium must decide. What must they decide? What must it decide? Not if women can be ordained as deacons, but whether women should be ordained as deacons. The question is not, is it possible? The question is, what does the church need? So, after the 2023 meeting, the first general meeting of the Synod on Synodality, ten study groups were formed. The request of the 2023 Assembly for the reports of my commission and the second commission were ignored. In 2024, sorry. 2024, 2023. In 2024, Study Group 5 about women in ministry gave a report. It's a 3-minute presentation by Cardinal Fernandez, who was the prefect of the dicastery now for the doctrine of the faith. He spoke for 3 minutes, but he digressed from what he had printed. From his printed talk, he said, we know what Pope Francis said, but the question is still open. What did Pope Francis say? In May of 2024, CBS TV interview with Nora O'Donnell said, Pope Francis said no to women deacons. So Fernandez is saying, we know what he said, but the question is still open. But then he went on to speak about women in ministry. Fernandez talked about many famous exemplary women, all of whom lived after the diaconate had died out. Nothing to do with 800, 900 years of history of women deacons. That was not well received. During the 2024 General Assembly, on October 18th, there was a meeting of the synod members only with people, only about women deacons. Fernandez did not go. He sent 2 staff members. There were 100 synod people who went to this meeting. 2 staff members said, line up, get a piece of paper with an email address for your comments. I have that paper. It's in 6 languages. Crazy. The women were very upset, and so were the men. 15 women asked for a meeting with Pope Francis. In 2 days, they got a meeting. 50 women showed up. Pope Francis heard what they said. Almost the next day, Cardinal Fernandez apologized. And within a few days, he had another meeting with 100 persons. That meeting is recorded. You can find it and listen to it. So what happened? The synod ended. They had a final document. The final document includes paragraph 60. The final report is magisterial teaching, and it says, quote, additionally, the question of women's access to the diaconal ministry remains open. But they did not say the diaconate. They said diaconal ministry. So what happened to all the entries, all the things that people sent to the synod? What happened to study group 5? Well, the second commission, which had met twice between, they met in September 2021 and July 2022, suddenly was recalled in February of 2025 to read all of the submissions made both to study group 5 and to the synod office. So they had a meeting. They met in Rome. At the time, I did not know how many submissions they received. I still don't know exactly how many submissions they received. I know that I sent complete texts in Latin of a book by Jean Morin, written in the 17th century, which compiles all the ordination liturgies for women in Latin, Greek, and the East and West Syrian rites. I also sent the text and analysis of an 8th century pontifical of Egbert of York in Latin, demonstrating that the same ritual was used for men and for women. The instructions say, if you ordain a man, you use these pronouns. If you ordain a woman, you use these pronouns. That's all. Everything else is identical. Okay. I also sent my publications, articles in theological studies at the time in English, Italian, Spanish, and Polish. I sent these to Study Group 5. Since then, the same article has been published in French in Lebanon. So what happened? The study group interim reports were published in the fall. Study Group 5 said that it had turned over the question to the second commission. And the second commission report was published December 4th, 2025. It is dismissive of the synod entries, and it argues for what's called the unicity of orders and the iconic argument. Okay. Unicity of orders, deacon, priest, bishop. Okay. Iconic argument, women cannot image Christ. I understand, however, that Selam and Sayama have completed the Amazon Rite, which asks for the ordinations of women as deacons. Let me tell you a little bit about the report of the Second Commission. It's terrible. It's terrible. First of all, there was no decision. Okay, there's no decision. Media reported that there was some kind of no decision. It's an opinion by 10, maybe 10 people. The details of the Second Commission, to me, are quite disturbing. And the actual report, which is only published in Italian, is upsetting to me. Because in English, the expression is cherry picking. There are reports of a vote from this meeting, that meeting, this meeting. But it's not complete. Okay. Anyway, the Vatican Press Office published a letter from Cardinal Giuseppe Petrocchi, the retired Archbishop of L'Aquila, Italy, who's president of the commission, which partly reported secret votes from among the 3 sessions of the Second Commission. And while this letter appears to exclude the possibility of ordaining women as deacons, it is an incomplete recounting of secret votes. And it has a lack of reference to serious historical, theological, and anthropological research. So the beginning of the letter predicts its own outcome. The commission did not determine the question of ordaining women as deacons. Continued discernment on the question is magisterially mandated by the final document of the Worldwide Synod on Synodality. Rather, the commission, which appears to have had a rotating membership, I can tell you more about that, preferred to recommend the invention of new ministries for women that do not require ordination. Early on, in a footnote, the letter firmly connects the diaconate with the priesthood, in opposition to many church documents, including the Second Vatican Council Dogmatic Constitution on the Church, Lumen Gentium, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Pope Benedict XVI Motu Proprio Omnium Inventum, all of which affirm that the diaconate is not part of the priesthood. The diaconate is not part of the priesthood. These church teachings deny the false history, the false theory of the unicity of orders, which in reverse argues that because women are not known to have been ordained as priests, they therefore could not have been ordained as deacons. Building on that false notion, it affirms a belief that women cannot image Christ and therefore cannot serve as deacons in persona Christi servi. Such a neo-Arian understanding of Jesus Christ and the resurrection is the result of what many scholars have called naive physicalism. Further, by assuming women cannot be ordained as deacons because they cannot image Christ, the letter restricts the understandings of the humanity of women. Women throughout the world suffer all manner of discrimination merely because they are women, from female genital mutilation to dowry burning to wife beating, worse and worse. The document suggests new ministries instead of a return to the historically documented, theologically possible, and anthropologically affirmed ordinations of women as deacons. While it argues that new ministries would, quote, constitute a prophetic sign, especially where women still suffer situations of gender discrimination, such would produce the opposite effect. Affirming that women cannot be ordained because they cannot image Christ as fully human persons, its proposal endangers women even more. It can be argued that the document states that women are not made in the image and likeness of God. As it happened, at the first meeting in September of 2021, only 2 of the unnamed commissioners voted in favor of ordaining women as deacons, as what they call a 3rd degree of holy orders, thereby again implying the connection to priesthood, while 2 abstained. Because these votes are incompletely reported, there's no way to trace any development of the thematic nuclei as the letter calls the key concepts supposedly under discussion. Further, the letter cites an additional secret document, okay? The quote, final document of the Commission on the Diaconate of Women, 7 February 2025, in support of its dismissive commentary on the documentation submitted in response to the request of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith during the Synod on Synodalities, October 2024 final meeting in Rome. The letter stunningly relates the masculinity of Christ with what it terms the nuptial meaning of salvation, arguing in full, I quote, the masculinity of Christ, and therefore the masculinity of those who receive holy orders, is not accidental, but an integral part of sacramental identity, preserving the divine order of salvation in Christ. Again, altering this reality would not be a simple adjustment of the ministry, but a rupture of the nuptial meaning of salvation. I have no idea what that means. Happily, okay. Only 5 of the 10 unknown commissioners voted, again anonymously, to confirm this statement, apparently at the final commission meeting in February 2025. There does not appear to have been a vote on one of the concluding comments in the letter, which credits the Marian dimension as the soul of any diaconia. As I said, the letter and this commentary will appear in Spanish in April in Phase, which is the publication of the Pastoral Liturgical Center in Barcelona, Spain, which has published many of my books and many of my writings in Spanish, including, this is an interesting book. It's an essay collection from the Pastoral Center, the Liturgical Center in Barcelona. I'm sure we have questions. I can show you more of my books. I have 3 in Spanish.
Go ahead, Phyllis. Show us your books, please.
Okay.
Mhm.
Holy Saturday, Sabato Santo, was published by,
Aletheia,
yes,
el Verbo Divino. Mhm.
this is very important book. It was first published in English 26 years ago, and immediately translated into Italian by Mondadori, and the publication was stopped by Opus Dei.
Wow.
But it was published by who published it?
El Verbo Divino,
Right.
Aletheia.
Yeah, Divino. Yeah, very nice.
Mhm.
This is essay collections from Phase. This is the book that Orlando mentioned. It is published by Paulus Press, Women Deacons, Past, Present, Future. Mujeres Diaconos. There's problems with the translation. There are corrections to it. This was, it has mistakes, but it's in Spanish. And this book in Spanish, Portuguese, French, and English was put into the mailboxes of Synod members at the Amazon Synod.
And what happened?
We have photographs of people coming out holding the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there's one more book that I can tell you about in Spanish. My colleague, Sister Irene Kelly, has published What's a Deacon?
For mothers to read.
which is a book for children and for mothers to read to them. And
Wow.
it's in, I think it's in Spanish. It's got
Yes.
pictures. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Lovely book. And
That-
so you have questions about this?
Excellent, very good. Maybe, Yolanda, you have some questions.
Sí, hay varias preguntas, todas están en inglés. ¿Quieren que las lea o lo quieres hacer tú, Eli?
I'm in the English section. I'm not hearing it, Ellie.
Sí, no la escucho tampoco. Sí. Sí. Ok, voy a comenzar con la primera pregunta. Dice Patricia, what about organizing a worldwide praying, even asking for the Holy Spirit to reveal the magisterium, what the church needs now about women's deaconate?
Wait, I'm hearing her in English and you in English. Shouldn't she be reading in Spanish?
¿Quieren que la traduzca en español? La voy a traducir en español para las personas que no hablan inglés. ¿Qué tal si se organiza una oración a nivel mundial preguntando al Espíritu Santo que revele al magisterio qué es lo que la iglesia necesita acerca del diaconado de las mujeres? Aparentemente, la historia, doctrina, pensamientos, teología no son suficientes para hacer que el magisterio acepte definir esta cuestión tan importante.
Ellie está traduciendo ahorita al inglés a Phyllis, o sea que ahora nos responderá.
Yes, I think that the discerning deacons groups, and it should be all around the world, celebrate St. Phoebe Day. But I think that you don't want it to appear to be a political argument. And so I think the idea is important. It's an important thing to do, but the question is how best to do it.
Tenemos una pregunta de Blanca. Dice, si entiendo correctamente, el reporte de la primera comisión está bajo secreto papal. ¿Es esto común? ¿Por qué?
It's the only commission I was on. I have no idea. And all of the second commission, the reports are under papal secrecy. The problem is this report from the second commission refers to things and you can't find them. You don't know what they wrote. The synod repeatedly asked for the reports of the first and second commissions. I heard Pope Francis tell the UISG he had more papers and they could request them. He also told the UISG they could publish what he gave them. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I wrote to the new executive director of the UISG and said, publish it. Because he gave them that permission. He did not give me that permission. And Cardinal Ladaria certainly didn't show me what was given. I was told that it by the executive director, it was only the history. I was like, we wrote more than just that.
Mhm.
So, and I've seen reports that we did. See, it's hard for me to say, because when I sat there listening to Pope Francis in 2019, he said we were like toads jumping from different pots. Maybe I missed a meeting. So I don't know.
Tenemos una pregunta más de Patricia. Dice, ¿por qué es que vocación nunca ha sido considerada posible cuando se habla acerca del diaconado para mujeres? ¿Está la vocación solamente conectada con el sacerdocio?
It's not. It's not. What is needed to promote the vocation of women deacons, aside from magisterial agreement that it can happen, is the need for really bishops to agree that they need first deacons, secondly, women deacons in their diocese. Now, this invention of new ministries indicates that they know they need ministry by women. But in English, the expression is, I don't know if it would make sense. I'm saying all work and no pay. All work and no pay.
And sisters.
What they want is to have volunteers
Mhm.
who will self-fund their work.
Yes.
That has been going on for 400 years, 500 years.
Yes.
And that's why you have institutes of women religious who self-fund hospitals, schools, nursing homes, social service, outside of the collection basket.
Mhm. Of course. Mhm.
Alina Rosales nos dice, gracias, muchas gracias, Phyllis, es grandioso oírte, y pregunta, ¿qué consecuencias clave eclesiológicas crees que serían las que primero se
Ecclesiological.
manifestaran en caso de admitirse un diaconado femenino?
The ecclesiological consequences?
¿Y será exactamente eso lo que impide el lugar que pasaríamos a tener las
Yes,
mujeres en la
yes.
iglesia?
It disrupts their understanding of deacon, priest, bishop, number one. Number two, the ordinary means of entering the clerical state is by ordination to the diaconate, okay? Okay, therefore, what did they do with a woman cleric? They can't think about it. Because I don't want to say the church, but the men cannot think about a woman being under the control of a church and a husband. They can't think about it. So I think the ecclesiological difference, positive, would be that bishops could train, ordain, and give faculties to the women who are working for them. But most importantly, it would demonstrate that women are made in the image and likeness of God. That women can image Christ. It's terrible not to think that the church denies women ordination by saying women cannot image Christ.
Blanca nos pregunta, el documento final habla también acerca del discernimiento en común que afecta a toda la iglesia y acerca de proveer toda la información relevante de ese proceso de decisión. El sentimiento de la fe de la gente o de la gente de Dios viene a mi mente también.
Yeah, well, this is the sensus fidelum, I think is part of the way of making the decision to restore. We're not talking about inventing anything new. It's part of the decision-making process. And that is why synodality is so important. What has been presented about synodality is we do not have to work together so much as we must all agree that we are together. We don't all have to do the same thing, but we have to stay within the church. If one diocese wants women deacons, why not? If another one cannot understand, okay. I refer again to what Pope Leo said in response to the European report from the synod teams. The question is one of culture. Not everyone, not every culture can accept women deacons. But I say, because not every culture can accept women deacons, it is important to have women deacons. Whether women are ordained or not in a given culture is one thing. If women are respected as made in the image and likeness of God in a culture is the most important thing. So, but when I heard him speak, he spoke in Italian. When I heard him speak to the synod teams about this topic, I heard that the culture that was the problem was the bubble of the Vatican in which he lives.
Patricia hace referencia una vez más al evento que proponía sobre la oración y nos dice, siempre podemos ver formas de hacer realidad este evento de oración y que no sea uno político.
Yeah, I think that's important, and it doesn't need to be one event. You know, I think there are different, there are, I think the Orthodox have 26 women deacons in their liturgical calendar. Okay. We have more than one. But to have an understanding that St. Phoebe Day is just not September 3rd. Every day should be St. Phoebe Day.
Abigail Barrera pregunta, ¿la decisión del diaconado femenino en la iglesia es entonces un tema abierto, pero no decidido a causa del magisterio y no un tema bíblico o doctrinal? ¿Correcto?
Yes. Yeah, it's 30 years ago, walking in Rome with the highest placed woman in the Vatican, I was told they can't say no. They just don't want to say yes.
Son las preguntas que tenemos hasta el momento.
Pues estoy fascinada con esta recorrido histórico por el que nos has llevado, Phyllis. Yo creo que muchas de nosotros tenemos perdido quizá todos estos estudios que hay y todas estas investigaciones que dan certeza y testimonio de que existió el diaconado en un inicio, ¿no? Y de la problemática que ha resultado de todo esto. Cuando yo escuché al Papa León, a mí me pareció que decía que estaba cerrada esta posibilidad. Cuando dijo que era algo cultural, la verdad yo lo entendí como que estaba cerrado a ello. Y, y la verdad me molestó mucho que esta nueva mirada de un nuevo papa fuera tan negativa de nuevo, ¿no? Otra vez cerrarnos la puerta en las narices. ¿Cómo ves tú a este nuevo papa con respecto a que pueda quizá haber un cambio, o una nueva presión para que las mujeres realmente
I don't
puedan
know.
acceder?
I do not want to give false hope. I think that, and I have been told, I think that if he is interested in new ministries, he will be affirming a position that denigrates women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've not heard him say, well, he can't close the issue in terms of saying women cannot be ordained. It's impossible. he can only say he doesn't want to do it. And I think in this case, and that's why the comment about the I think in this case, and that's why the comment about new ministries is so important, excuse me, I'm confused. I heard something else. That's why the comment about a prayer is so important. Because if the people of God are praying seriously, asking the Holy Spirit to encourage the hierarchy to restore women to their rightful place, really, that it will then move up. It's not going to come down. It can only come from the bottom. And I think the place to look for it is in Central and South America. I can tell you that many of the countries around the world, the poorest countries around the world, are have no problem with women in the diaconate. Not only the poor countries, but also the countries that have large expanses of territory. I'm thinking of Australia, to a certain extent, New Zealand, certainly Africa and India, as well as all of South America and Central America, in terms of poverty, that when I have spoke to the bishops and cardinals from these territories, they needed help. And the most, the word efficient is not the right word. The best help they could get would be women who are trained, ordained, and given faculties. Very, very important. It's nice to have lay preaching, but that person is not speaking on behalf of the bishop. It's nice to have lay ministries, and they're very important, but only an ordained person can obtain certain offices. Only an ordained person can be a single judge in a canonical proceeding. Why does that matter? Because the new rules about annulments say you only need one judge. So now you cannot have a woman as a single judge in a canonical proceeding. You find that these kinds of situations, of course, not many people are getting annulled now because not many people are getting married in the church, but it still points to the way in which women really could participate more in the life of the church. If a woman is a deacon, and therefore a cleric and a canon lawyer and a judicial judge, that to me is a big deal. It's a very important thing. So anyway, I think that if we are to, well, let me remind myself, when Pope Francis answered the women religious in 2016, he said he remembered a professor, a Syrian professor, who spoke about women in the diaconate, women deacons. And he said that when a woman accused her husband of beating her, she would go to the woman deacon who would examine the bruises. The woman deacon would then go to the bishop and testify. He felt that was very important. I heard him say it twice, once in the public meeting and secondly in private. And when you think about it, a woman who needs to have an annulment because her husband is beating her, because he refuses to have children, because of whatever reason, wouldn't it be better if she could speak to a woman lawyer? Yes, they do have women lawyers doing the intake, but in a poor parish, a poor diocese, where there's only one canon lawyer, that canon lawyer will not be a female. I was asked by a Irish bishop if he should hire a woman, he gave the name, as his canon lawyer. And I asked him if he was a canon lawyer. And he said no. I said, well, you cannot hire her because she cannot sign anything. She will write the papers, but you will not know what you are signing. So there are, in terms of the earlier question about ecclesiological implications, in the structure of the church, I think it would be helpful to have a woman canon lawyer who is a cleric in there. In the United States, there are many, many chancellors, diocesan chancellors who are women, who are not, many of them are canon lawyers, but they're not clerics. So they can't sign a lot of paperwork. It's as simple as that. And the other point is preaching. Technically, the rules from the Congregation for Worship say that only a cleric who participates in a mass can preach at that mass. So that eliminates any woman right away. And the idea that after communion, a woman will give a reflection, the mass is a whole. The liturgy has its own flow, its way of being, and to disconnect the liturgy of the word and move it to the end, it just doesn't make sense. I think that the mistake, and you hear this from the men, the mistake is that the men are fearful of women having power. Well, if anybody thinks being ordained as a deacon means getting power, they're wrong. It is a ministry of service. For me, it is a way of connecting the collection plate with ministry. I don't really think the church needs that many more bishops, that many more priests. I think the church needs more ministry. And I think that if you have women involved in the diaconate, the diaconate was once very powerful. And that is why in the 12th century, the priests basically in Rome said, you can't be a deacon unless you are going to be a priest. That became law until Vatican II. So But the deacons up till the 12th century, well, before that, maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe centuries, the deacons had all the money, controlled the money. And they gave it to the poor, which I think is a pretty good idea. Anyway, in Rome particularly, but elsewhere in Europe, by the 12th century, the priests in Rome did not like this. Why? We have 36 popes who were never priests. 36 popes were the deacon, the archdeacon of Rome. The pope died, and they were elected pope. And in other places in Europe, the deacon who was running the diocese would be elected as the bishop. That stopped. It became law. Most of this happened in the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries, but that became law by the 12th century with Gresham. You cannot be ordained a priest. You cannot be ordained a deacon unless you are going to be ordained a priest. So that is where this business of the unicity of orders comes from. Deacon, priest, bishop are so connected. But at the actually at Trent, at the Council of Trent, canon in the 23rd session of the Council of Trent, I think, the Council of Trent said that people who are in specific orders are the ones to perform the duties of these orders. Acolytes will be acolytes. Lectors will be lectors. Subdeacons will be subdeacons. Deacons will be deacons. Okay. That never really caught on. Okay. Until Vatican II. So in Vatican II, after Vatican II, 1972, and after Vatican II, the 4 minor orders, lector, a porter, lector, exorcist, acolyte, were collapsed. And also the major order of subdeacon pretty much collapsed into 2 installed orders, 2 installed lay ministries, the lectorate and the acolyte. Okay. So you no longer had porter, lector, exorcist, acolyte, subdeacon. You only had lector and acolyte. I feel like Star Wars here, you know, just but and the diaconate after Vatican II became very clearly understood as not part of the priesthood. Diaconate, priests, bishops. Okay. In 2006, Pope Benedict XVI, as the Bishop of Rome, met with his priests. And one of them said, "What about more women in ministry?" And he said, there are due binaro, 2 tracks. Basically, the ministry and the priesthood. Okay. I never understood what he was talking about with 2 tracks until I was standing in Rome at a train station. And when you look down the tracks, they seem to meet, but they never do. The further you go down, they're still apart. And that is what he was saying. No matter how you look down this way and you think the diaconate and the priesthood meet, they never do. Two tracks. So, Benedict XVI wrote in 2009 in a document called Omnium Inventum, he changed canon law. And the canon says, basically, the diaconate is not the priesthood. He said exactly what is in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The diaconate is not the priesthood. The Catechism said exactly what is in Lumen Gentium 29, that diaconate is not the priesthood. So I think it goes, it becomes circular because they connect the diaconate and the priesthood. And Inter Insignores said, women cannot image Christ. Women cannot be in persona Christi capitis ecclesiae. And in 2002, really Gerhard Müller, the International Theological Commission, said that the deacon is in persona Christi servi. Somehow they are connecting in persona Christi everything with priesthood. But the mistake is, we're not talking about in persona Christi servi capitis ecclesiae, in the person of Christ the King, Christ the head of the church. We're talking about Christ's servant, and we are all part of the body of Christ, and we are all able to image Christ as servants of the church in the church. That's why, to me, it's so confusing that the letter, the report of the Second Commission, ends with the Marian dimension, Mary, of diaconia, the Marian dimension of the diaconate. It's not to say that the diaconate is only a feminine activity, but if they keep calling the church female, they need to remember that before in persona Christi servi, there was in nomine ecclesiae, in the name of the church. The deacon works in the name of the church. So I'm not saying we should have no male deacons, but to me, it's very confusing the way they shift the cards.
Bueno, yo nada más dos comentarios muy breves. Uno es recoger esta pregunta que decía, ¿qué es lo que la iglesia necesita? Y creo que se ha contestado con este ejemplo de las mujeres
I didn't hear it.
cuando necesitamos comentar algo que nos sucede. Es siempre más fácil comentarlo con otra mujer, dirigirnos a otra mujer que tiene el mismo sentir.
Right.
Y eso
Of
va
course.
a lo de qué es lo que la iglesia necesita, que debería ser la pregunta. Y la otra que me llamó mucho la atención que quiero recoger es ese documento secreto sobre la masculinidad de Cristo. Hoy día, después de más de 2000 años, hablamos sobre nuevas masculinidades. Que Cristo, que para mí Cristo vino a enseñar hace más de 2000 años y apenas hoy día estamos comprendiendo el significado de esas nuevas masculinidades. Una masculinidad que no es opresora, que es incluyente, que abre las puertas a una igualdad entre hombres y mujeres. Entonces se me hace muy retrógrado por parte de la Iglesia recurrir a un tipo de documento como este llamado la masculinidad de Cristo.
Right.
Sería mi comentario. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Y Andrea, creo que la pregunta final era si pueden encontrar esta sesión grabada.
Pues sí, como todos nuestros webinars, recuerden que quedan grabados en el canal de YouTube. Estamos tratando también de que la interpretación que nos ha realizado Ellie tan maravillosamente, de la cual estamos muy agradecidas, porque ella dice, yo no soy traductora de idiomas, pero se ofreció porque conoce muy bien el trabajo de Phyllis, entonces ella con muchas ganas y con mucho entusiasmo ha realizado esta interpretación al español. Esperamos también tenerla para YouTube, para que quien no habla inglés pueda tenerlo en español. Agradecer a Phyllis, a Ellie, a Yolanda por este encuentro maravilloso en el que nos ha permitido abrir los ojos y sobre todo a seguir luchando, a seguir cultivándonos, a seguir leyendo todo este estudio que tiene Phyllis en sus libros, tanto en inglés como en español y en tantos idiomas, que sigamos aprendiendo porque el cultivarnos ayuda a presionar y como dice Phyllis, el cambio no va a venir de arriba, el cambio viene desde abajo, desde nosotras mismas, desde nuestras comunidades, desde nuestros círculos, desde ahí tenemos que empujar la carreta. O sea que les doy muchísimas gracias. Ha sido un encuentro maravilloso. Les recuerdo que el próximo jueves tenemos también otro webinar con Emma Martínez Ocaña. Las invitamos a inscribirse. Y gracias de nuevo.
Ellie, tell them there's stuff in Spanish on my website.
Perfecto. Y bueno, pues despedirnos y darle las gracias. Muchas gracias, Ellie. Muchas gracias, Yolanda. Y sobre todo, gracias a ti, Philip, por este gran recorrido de investigación que nos abre puertas y ventanas. Muchas gracias. Beso muy fuerte
Gracias.
desde México. Bye, bye.